So today there were a couple of things that you brought up, Deborah, that we kind of were batting around that are going on right now, kind of out there. So one of them was what's going on at Columbia? You want to tell us about that?
Hear about that a little bit.
Yeah.
How do I want to? So I want to. It's so easy to kind of jump into like a side or this or that. I'm kind of looking at it from the standpoint of, wokeness, free speech, academic freedom. But there seems to be a growing, um, the presence of the protests. They're just getting stronger and stronger, and they've kind of moved from being more about please help these poor Gazans, to the revolution. Like we want the revolution. You see people with signs with like famous terrorists that people are sort of praising, and that's not. I wouldn't want to say it's all the protesters either. So it seems to be a mix, but the tone is quite intense. And what happened was they set up a little encampment on the main campus. I think was it Thursday? The president of the university got called before Congress to kind of talk about this whole thing. She had the police come and remove everybody, but then that didn't really stop anything. A few people got arrested. I think Ilhan Omar's daughter, whatever. But they kind of went back and they're camping again. I went up there Friday because I just like seeing where the action is, and I, I I couldn't get in on a campus because you had to have an ID.
Mm.
So there was just a little group around the subway station. I did see a bunch of boomers. Actually, you could see people, they were probably protesting Vietnam. They had their
Hmm.
little signs, and the police presence was quite in riot gear, quite strong. There was a roving vehicle with there's messaging boards on the side of it, and it was saying everything like the president of the university is like a careerist or a bootlicker. Uh, Columbia is committing genocide. Things of that nature.
Mhm.
And so that was around, but I couldn't really get up to see anything too close. But it looks like the last few nights things on the campus have just gotten really much more intense. People, even Jewish people, coming up in like a formation of people going step back, like with chants and repeat and like moving forward.
I
People
just saw a
claiming,
video of that. Yeah.
yeah, you got to get out of here. Basically, this is our private space, even though it's the campus.
Yeah.
I saw a woman just with a call basically for, more like communist revolution, so the speeches are getting a little more fiery. I think Jewish students are feeling intimidated. I struggle with the whole, when is it anti-Semitic and when isn't it? And how do we know? But it just seems people are just yelling, go back to Poland. They're saying these things. They're just making up. And Yale, they made this really kind of rude rap song that was kind of pretty anti the Jewish
Mm.
students.
Mm.
And I think where it stands
Was
is
it
that,
throw the Jew
okay,
down the well
it wasn't that, but
so
it had
my country
even had
can
the
be
N
free?
word in it. It had
Oh,
bitch.
Mm.
It had like, it had a lot going on in there. I know a young woman who got poked in the eye at Yale,
Oh my
with a
gosh.
flag. I don't know that they went like that, but she got hurt. And the mayor has declared, like the NYPD will come in, but we won't come in unless the university asks for us
Mm.
to come in. We don't,
oh,
it's
this is
private
just like
property.
Evergreen, man. This is just like Evergreen. I was watching the video. They are just as annoying and brazen with their freaking like whatever is acceptable racism. It's great.
Yeah,
It's
that's
just
what I was thinking
fabulous.
about. I was like, is this getting evergreenish? I mean, because they did
Yeah.
declare it's the People's University now of something, Gaza. I don't know.
They
Like,
chazzed it.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
so the thing, I just listened to a podcast just before this on commentary, and they said the mayor saying that the NYPD will only go in, they can't go on private property. They said that's ridiculous. Say you had your husband beating you in your private apartment, the police could come in and stop that. So it was kind of a BS thing the mayor apparently
Hmm. Hmm.
said. So I
Oh,
don't
the
know. I
mayor of New
think,
York City.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he
So
doesn't stack up. He's like, we're a sanctuary city. Get the immigrants out of here. Yeah, he's a complete shell. Like there's no
Incoherent.
backbone there. Yeah. He's
Yeah.
he's a George Bridges. He's just another ineffectual, mediocre leader.
yeah. So what's interesting is to look at the chatter, because there's some people that are very not into Israel right now, and I've seen people just saying, "Oh, this is so amazing. These young people, they're going to change minds." And I'm thinking, in New York, they're not changing anybody's minds. Everyone's fed up with them blocking bridges and roads and just being basically unpleasant. And so I don't know that they're winning any hearts and minds. I think they're scaring people. I don't know. I mean, that might just be me, but I don't find it inspiring. Like, even if you thought something they had to say was had something worth it to listen to, I find that I don't want to really listen to them because I just feel like they're
Mhm.
being really like I'm
Yeah.
just being blunt about it.
Yeah. Well, and you had to present ID to get on campus, and you couldn't do that. So
I know I couldn't do that.
so that
No.
means that everybody on campus is a student. All of this is actually
Well,
students.
Well,
well,
that's what I don't know. I'm imagining people got on there that maybe aren't and just been staying in people's rooms. So I'm completely speculating.
Hmm.
Because you do have to get in at this point, but I don't know who else got in before you had to do that.
It's really interesting that that this has become a focal point for a lot of these protesters. This Israel-Palestine thing. That's become such a big issue for these protesters.
okay, so let's run through it. So you had when was the Michael Brown? Was it Michael Brown? Hands up, don't shoot, kid. That was
Ferguson.
Obama era, so that was 2011 or something like that. And then you had George Zimmerman about the same time, right? And then you had, I guess, Gamergate. So then you had Me Too stuff. Then you had a bunch of, and then you had Evergreen. So you had like these different outbursts of revolutionary fervor, which is totally limp-dicked revolutionary fervor. These people are not serious. They have no follow-through, and I really doubt that they'll be violent, other than like maybe some Antifa, we're going to destroy some buildings and stuff like that. But at least on the college campuses, they really don't have the ability to follow through. And even if they did, they wouldn't know what to do when they did violence. So they'll walk the line for violence and stuff. But then you had, I guess, George Floyd happening. So they're always looking for reasons. Their programming is that they're going to stand up and they're going to get their revolutionary cred. They're just waiting for the cause to do this, the cause that collapses enough of them into one single power struggle. And so the details, it was interesting. Ukraine didn't hit that nerve, right?
Mm-mm.
And it was George Floyd stuff, and then it kind of died out for a while, and then Ukraine kind of happened right after. You remember that meme of Indiana Jones taking the coronavirus and swiping it out with Ukraine, and the NPCs like taking out the vaccine thing and putting in the Ukraine. But it's just so fascinating with October 7th. It completely shatters the whole like leftist web of, like of mutually assured victimization. It's like, wait, who's the victim now? And who's the victim now? And the Jewish people who are ended thinking this way can claim anti-Semitism because that is ingrained in American culture not to be anti-Semitic. But those people who are leaning on that to shore up the power coalition, the victimhood coalition, are at odds with the settler colonial people, who are like, well, brown people are more oppressed and like settler colonial people are the real oppressors. So like the whole oppressor oppressed dynamic, it doesn't add up. So you just see the whole leftist institutions of the college and stuff who are run by a very highly intelligent strain of people who are assumably Jewish Ashkenazi Jews, like they don't know what to do and they were setting all this stuff in motion. I think they were setting this all in motion, playing with fire with the whole anti-white stuff.
Mm.
Who could have guessed voting in the leopards will eat your face party that a leopard would eat your face, and that's kind of what's happening. It's so my 2 points. One, it's gloriously indicative of the instability of the victim politics. Two, I don't think that they're really serious, and that's why it's contained to college campuses and bridges and like this like really passive aggressive weak stuff. They're not going to actually do anything other than inconvenience people until they get their way, because that is what revolution means to them. It means the appearance of standing up to the man. And the wall, since 2000, whenever Occupy Wall Street happened, and was disbanded, the powers that be have already known that this is complete show, this is complete catharsis. They can play the narrative and then it'll fizzle out because these people don't have any organizational power or follow through.
Mm.
Yeah, it could go like
So
it does. Yeah, it doesn't seem like again. There are other colleges that are like lighting up because they're catalyzing other. But as you're saying, like, can it go past that? Probably not. I mean, most of the causes they're trying to rope in. So they're trying to rope in now the workers too. Like, oh, the workers on our campus. But
they
most of
hate
it
the
is.
workers.
I
They're
know,
the
but
most
most of
entitled generation. They hate
I
work.
know. And then now the imperialist project, because that's where it turned in the last couple of days. It turned from Gaza and these poor people being decimated to this whole global imperialist USA is terrible thing. Um,
Mm,
and but again, like you're saying, but a lot of them even were like crying when they got arrested. It wasn't like
yeah.
the old protesters that are kind of tough and they kind of like getting hauled, whatever. Right? It was just like, oh, I didn't mean it or something.
Yeah. Hey,
So yeah,
welcome.
you're
Let
like,
me go
how
to the
well could these people
bathroom.
stand up to anything? I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah. They can stand up en masse, but I think it's the power of democracy too. It's like democracy has very brief moments of unified power and then it disperses again. Like
Mm.
usually the oligarchy, which would be like a coalition of, unelected officials orchestrating everything, the bureaucracy, has staying power. Monarchy has kind of staying power if it gets democracy to break the oligarchy and then reformulate the oligarchy under its, unified principles. So that's what we're seeing. There's just like these oligarchy and democracy kind of just going back and forth and kind of looping and not really just going towards degeneration.
I guess it is probably ruining the universities more. Like I can see like probably now a lot of people, if they're Jewish, they'll go, we're not just going to go to college anymore because it's not a very pleasant and we're not really that welcome there. Or
Hmm.
people going, I don't want to send my kid to these places where there's all these people just
I wonder.
agitating and making it so like they made school today possibly online at Columbia because
Mm.
people were afraid to go to class. Um, so
Hmm.
Yeah, it
so
makes
I
me
don't know if this is
wonder
just
what's too much.
discrediting. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, what's too much for the universities? When is that? When are we going to get tired of this with schools? I mean, they've gone completely woke. They encourage kids to be activists, and now they're creating this atmosphere where it's really unsafe for people to be there, like really unsafe instead of just
Yeah.
unsafe.
Yeah,
Mm.
I don't
That,
know.
the performance of activism, that's interesting. What does it mean to be an activist? Do you remember, Benjamin, when we were on vacation this
Oh yeah.
last a couple months ago, and we're at this cute little beachside shopping center that had a bunch of little restaurants and shops in it. And in the middle, there's like this lawn area, and a bunch of people started performing their activism.
Yeah.
They just came out into this cute little area, and they're cute. They're all a bunch of like moms or young women,
Yeah.
and they had signs, and they were doing arts and crafts, making these Palestine kind of flags and things, and then using bullhorns to yell at everybody about it. But it just felt so. I don't know. I don't like the word performative because that's like such a woke word, but it felt like it was a
It was Day
performance.
at the Park. Yeah, Day at the Park changed the world.
And
Changed
they
the
had
world
like
in
their
your
little craft
jammies.
center. Like they had their
Yeah.
little like kids and everybody's painting. And it was like, we're going to do arts and crafts activism.
Mug muffin and decolonialize.
It's very strange.
Yeah, it's fun. I like to mock the activists.
Mm.
I didn't always like to mock them. Well, I've actually even like, back in high school, like when like people were like big into the environment, people were like talking about the environment, you know. And I mean, full disclosure, I used to listen to Rush Limbaugh when I was doing my paper route, as 11, 12, 13, 14. So I was inundated with Rush Limbaugh's brand of highly snarky propaganda.
Mm.
But I'm like, why are you caring about something over there? Like you
Mm.
found your cause. It's something over there, and it's the same people, it's kind of this similar criticism that I would hear about my religion, which was Christianity. Like, why do you care about life in the future? Like, why don't you live for now and good here? Why do you need some sort of sky daddy, some sort of like. And Leslie, we were talking about this, about like immature versions of religious story, and then how if you do start to work through and grow in your faith, whatever faith that is, you start to get more particular, you start to understand the more nuanced aspects of it. And I think that what we see with regard to critical social justice activism or wokeness is that you have a lot of really low resolution potato camera quality belief in like, I'm going to change the world by believing in something over there. I'm going to believe about I'm going to worry about the climate and jerk off in my bedroom because I can't do anything with my life, kind of thing. So this is a moment, I guess, in one way, this is a moment for these kids to not just be obsessed with their Instagram. I mean, that's there, but like they're not like jerking off in the corner or like posting thirst photos on their Instagram. They're actually out there getting at least a little cardio, at least a
Yeah.
little exercise, and at least a little community love.
Community. Yeah, you could feel that. Who piece? I just saw it the other day. Oh, was it yesterday? It was it was something about like doing these things so you can get laid. Like I can't remember. Was it?
Yeah, why
Or
not?
sexual selection? No, was it that Greg George? What's his name? The polyprimal guy, the
Oh yeah, yeah.
Miller,
George
Jeffrey
Miller.
Miller. It was
No,
something
Jeffrey
about
Miller.
people
Yeah.
choosing partners based. Oh God, I don't even want to keep going because the idea I have is totally off. But there was something on mate selection based on political leaning, or I don't even know what it was. Anyway, I don't know if some of these kids are actually finding a way to just go out and hang out with each other, like which they're having a hard time doing otherwise,
Yeah.
physically. So I mean, there might be that. I'm surprised. Well, I'm not entirely surprised, but when you see some of the things that circulate on Twitter, which I can't tell is a good representation, there are a lot of women actually speaking on it. I don't know if they actually are Muslim women or
Mm.
not. It's just been interesting how many women are actually some of these people that are speaking these fiery things.
Hmm.
It's just
Yeah.
an observation I've had.
Yeah. I got to do something domestic really quick. I'm still going to be listening. I'm going to hand off I'll be right back. Sorry.
Yeah, I think you're bringing up something really interesting, both of you, in terms of meaning and community. What does this do? And I think I've brought this up a few times, but I remember when I was in undergrad and I was studying sociology, there was this concept that we talked about a lot of anomy or anomy, which was this idea that people were starting to feel a loss of place in the world, a loss of purpose, a sense of purposelessness, a sense of uselessness. And that this was, at the time, the way that this was being talked about in my textbooks and my classes was that this was going to be a more and more prevalent issue for young people as we made things automated, as we started to use machines and replace workers. And so the example was like the grocery clerk's job has gotten a lot simpler. So there's not as much skill and there's not as much pride in that, and on and on and on. So these like lower level jobs have become more and more low level, and less value is found for the individual in that. Thank you. And so, with this concept in mind, and that really resonated for me. And it resonates when I speak with young people. There does seem to be this sort of apathy and a sense of hopelessness for themselves. And these kinds of big activist missions provide a way to see purpose and a way to have a sense of unity and mission. And I think that it's something that people so badly need in their lives. People need to feel like there's a point. It's kind of foundational. And
Deborah,
so this offers that.
Did you have that like when you're, I don't know, in your teen years or 20 years, like on a mission, like a desire or like an attraction to missionary activity of like, or activism or something like that?
Well, I've campaigned for people. I mean, my family, it's funny, I'm laughing. I'm thinking back. So my family was, very democratic. I remember we wore like POW bracelets and wore little peace symbols and stuff, like even as a child. I wasn't out agitating, but I remember we had family members that went to like the March on Washington, stuff like that. So I didn't necessarily feel like I needed to do it so much. I did have some sense I do think there's something in youth about, I have a purpose and I'm going to do something. I don't know if everybody thinks that, but like, I'm going to have a big impact. And so I don't know how much that comes with youth. In some ways we need that energy, right? I was thinking about it, and sometimes it's annoying, but I think having younger people that don't really know, they can sometimes, we might go, oh, it's not possible. And sometimes we're right, but sometimes they may bring, something might emerge from young people that is actually good. It's freshening the whole conversation. So I'm just to me, it's that balance of what do younger people bring. And sometimes I'm just like, oh, shut up. You don't know what you're talking about. And then sometimes it's like, oh, we might, like, maybe there's a little something here. Maybe it's good. There's some zeal because as you get older, you just kind of like,
Yeah.
don't feel like it.
Yeah.
Too tired.
I mean,
Well, I think
I
you need
did care
motivation.
about the Iraq war, and then I stopped caring after that because it was just dumb. There's nothing that my activism could do or my feelings about this thing could do. I can sit there and be feelingful on the internet, writing little feelingly posts on Facebook. It's like now I do that on Twitter. But it's
Yeah, I think
very
that's less
lately.
helpful. I mean, I've done things like, phone calls to, if we, I don't know, do our legislators listen to us? But like a little more useful potential
Okay,
thing
yeah.
is to get a lot of people to call about a vote on a bill that maybe that'll do something instead of, that's not as performative, right? You might go tell your friends on Facebook, hi, I just called my whatever, but like you actually did do that. You weren't just with signs and like yelling chants and stuff like that.
Yeah, I did some environmental activism, but what I did was I volunteered for a couple of different groups in San Antonio, the Greater Edwards Aquifer Alliance and another one, Aquifer Guardians. There's this karst aquifer that supplies all the drinking water for Bexar County or San Antonio and the surrounding area. And there were always the land over top of that aquifer recharge zone, and rain is really precious there. It dumps rain a couple times a year, and a lot of the time it's really dry and you're in drought. So that recharge zone is important to keep that clear so that the water can filter down and recharge the reservoir. And so but also the real estate there is really beautiful. Like the land is so pretty. It's the hill country. It's like people want to develop out there. And so there was always this push pull between the people who were concerned about the quality of your drinking water and not having a bunch of VOC runoff into your drinking water, because it's just a very natural filtration system. It's just limestone. So if you put a bunch of parking lots on it and you've got cars sitting on it, or golf courses with all their fertilizers, that was another big one. There was a PGA golf course that wanted to come in. I think they ended up winning and doing it. But so there were these organizations that were focused on connecting people to the issue so that we could talk to our city council and our legislators. And so I would go into an office every week and make phone calls and organize and give people their talking points. And then I would host events and, help to put on the fundraiser parties and stuff like that. So that was the kind of activism I did in my 20s. It wasn't so much standing around with signs as trying to learn about the issue and trying to connect people who cared about the issue to the city council and the people who could do something about it.
Yeah. So mature.
Oh, I don't know.
Devin Ware, right?
But I've done other things, I joined lockdown protests. And so how does that look different? How is that different? And I think I could justify and I could rationalize how that's different, but I was standing outside with a sign, and
yeah. How cringy were you though?
I don't know. I guess the cringe is in the eye of the beholder, isn't it?
A little bit. How self-possessed were you? How irate or unirate? You had
I wasn't irate. I was
a burning ember of hatred for fucking Inslee, right? But
well, yeah, but I was usually there having a good time with, it felt good. It felt like, wow, there's all these people who see this, are as concerned about it. It was very validating. It was like, this feels really wrong, what's happening. I'm really disturbed about the overreach of government. And now I see that there's a whole bunch of other people who are worried about this too. And so we would talk and we would, it was that same sense of community. All these things, I don't want to mock them too much because
fair.
I'm trying to find where's the dividing line. Why is my version of this good? And then I look at these people and I'd say that's somehow silly or performative, So I'm trying to find that line. Certainly there's the content of what you're doing. And so we could take issue with certain topics. There's things like the throwing paint on the art or throwing soup on these art or gosh, that's really vile, I think. I think that's another level altogether. Or the blocking of traffic.
Yeah. Like
Like
what
you
they
don't know
do
what you're
in
messing with when you
UK.
do that.
They're just like sitting in the middle of the road and like,
Mhm.
I'm gonna save the oil
Well, it
fields.
wins over nobody. I mean, that's why I just don't even understand those things. I mean, people would just be like, oh, I don't even want to. Maybe somebody had a point. It's like I don't even want to know what their point is. If they going to affect, say, someone can't get to work or they couldn't get to a hospital because they were in the ambulance, or
Mhm.
it
Yeah.
doesn't make sense. I'd love to see if people are gonna have protests. Because I was even thinking this, or I was thinking, why isn't the campus organizing this? Like, what if you really set up some dialogues or something like that? Or what if you had the leader of this one group and then they actually spoke and then they were required, or not required, invited to like actually have a conversation with other people to tease out what they're trying to someone come interview them. I don't know, just instead of people just going nah, 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 like that, right? Like to actually have some exchange or some dialogue or something, where because nothing's really getting through. I don't think anyone's convincing anybody of something else. But if you were going to be invited to, like, let me have a dialogue with like the head of the Hillel, like the Jewish Center, or
Mm.
like
Mhm.
let's have this. Okay, you want to say something, say it to them, right?
There
Or
was this there was this great moment in the Evergreen footage. Actually, it was just an audio recording of this for this moment where this guy starts yelling at Brett Weinstein. It was okay. A lot of things are happening, but there's this big struggle session, and then Brett and everybody leaves the struggle session, and like somebody's like starts yelling at Brett, like, stop with your logic and reason and white ways of knowing or something like that. It was just like that whole form of rational, careful, logical debate is itself colonialist. Like it's
Mhm.
like, no, we're not doing that here. We're not doing that here. Racism is happening. It's an existential threat, and we don't have time. We don't have time. So it's just like it's the perfect means for which through which the oligarchy battens down more power. Like with Evergreens. Like, okay, you guys get off. And at one point in the struggle session, the Evergreen students were demanding that their equity center be the same size as Washington University's equity center. And they started like this one guy started trotting out the square footage of all these equity centers, but like and not talking about like just how bigger like those campuses are, but like it was ours is just like this by this. Like that's just not justice. We want more feet. We want more footage. And I mean they're making a lot of footage. But the that's one thing that the college did listen to. It's like, okay, we will ramp up how frequently we start to police people's speech in the name of equity. We will ramp up these diversity programs. We'll throw more and more money at diversity, equity, and inclusion. We'll have more events. We'll do all the things that make us stronger and make you feel more coddled. So that's the only thing that's going to happen. The oligarchy plays democracy to by this kind of this infantilizing victim kind of back and forth
I
tension
just
or
want someone to
resolution.
stop it. It's like, I hate to say it, I'm going to be sexist. It's like I don't see these women presidents like doing it, right? Like I just want someone to say we're not doing this anymore. Cut it out,
Yeah.
you
Mhm.
know?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
that. That's not what you do at a university. You don't get to stamp and have a tantrum. That's not
Why do you
how
think
the
they
world.
don't? Why are they not doing that?
There, it seems like again, this sort of fear of being called to this, that, or the other. I don't know who wants to be the first one to do it and take the slate. I don't know.
Mhm.
I just
There's
want
the
somebody
economics of
to
the
do it.
situation. Like the school is a service now, kind of basically, and the bureaucracy just like hiring people in it that think towards expanding it, which is that we don't want to lose students. So we have to do this really careful rubric to retain these students. And then there's all that DEI stuff. So we brought on board all these students who weren't really college ready and probably aren't going to really be serviced well by getting degrees. And so, but we created all this ethnic studies stuff to put all of the not naturally academically inclined or talented people. They get to go and like fill out their little forms, and do their little chants and like learn how to like overthrow the system in a way that's safe for the system. Right. So and they get more college loans. This is what you do. This is what you do. You cut off all student loans, or well, you make colleges responsible for all those student loans. You
Mm,
allow students to default on their loans, and you make the colleges liable. You get the government, you get the safety net out of their way, and you allow for a feedback loop to occur on
hmm
the campus. So it's
hmm
actually, I would say it's government funding fault for this happening because there's
hmm
no touching reality for any of these people. They can literally it starts with the no financial accountability and then it ends up with no like actual accountability to whatever it would be, not justice, but like the mayor
Truth.
saying, it's your job. We're not accountable for you. Like you're not accountable to us. Like you can do whatever you want. We're not going to help you guys,
Hmm
until you let us help you. It's just all this kind of
That's the buck.
deferment of accountability. And this goes back to our perpetual conversation, Leslie, with regard to powers. Like, how do you hold the oligarchy accountable,
hmm
especially when it uses democratic angst to cover for itself and
hmm
to facilitate its spread?
Well, I
And
think
then
that's the
Deborah
best
is
thing I've
saying,
heard.
like, I just want a man to come through and like throw a spear through the dragon, tell the kids to get back to work, kick the people off the campus who aren't there to learn, and
Yeah.
restore order to this system and restore purpose to the system. What is the purpose of the colleges? Is it to be fake and gay? Is it to pursue the truth? Or is it to promulgate some sort of like seminary, cultural system of
hmm
ethics?
hmm
Benjamin, do you think the oligarchy knows and is doing this all in a concerted way, or do you think there's incentives?
Yeah.
Like,
Like it's that really stupid word called emergence.
yeah,
I think it's just emergent principles. Like, well, and I get that from like when I studied the Evergreen State College, and I have to just as an aside, anybody who's interested in any of these topics, I highly suggest, especially if you're motivated to do so, to just pick one topic and understand that one topic all the way through. And that just learning about Evergreen and teaching kind of Evergreen really taught me about how a lot of different systems work. It taught me about how the college system kind of works, the social justice stuff kind of works, and then also the news media kind of works, where people write these articles about Evergreen, and they're like, I'm the only one who knows, like, well, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong, it's wrong. But also with regard to like, why did George Bridges, the president of the Evergreen State College, behave so facile and limp? And it wasn't like he had no spine. He had a spine of a serpent where he just assumed whatever role the room was in. He would enter any room and just know who was the most powerful person in that room and cater to that power. Like in his tone of voice, like he would speak differently to the students than he did to the legislature. Like he had a different accent. He would
Mm.
just completely like mold himself to the room. So the system created George Bridges. George Bridges is just the guy who kept on showing up to work, got selected through the system to perpetuate the system. So I think that's an emergent property. And then he in his own system thinking, what he did when he got on campus was heavily stack the administration and then align and then surround himself by a bunch of bureaucracy so he can't get actually challenged actually by any of the teachers, right? And he used this social justice ideology to buffer himself from accountability towards the teachers. And Evergreen was explicitly set up to be very teacher led and teacher focused and student led and student focused. And the administration was designed to be as minimal as possible. But once you got this social justice stuff, it like completely allowed all of this stuff to invert. And all the teachers who gave their power to the administration were the teachers who could think in the terms of the administration and who were after power, which would be, I get to define what is hate speech. They had this incident where somebody wrote fuck turfs. They sprayed that. And this was way before I knew what a turf was, right? They sprayed that fuck turfs on the campus. And this feminist complained, said that is really hateful language to me, and
Mhm.
this is like this is a classical feminist or classical rad fem. And then one of the teachers who was a female who's like non-binary and Jewish. And I have a speech of her like going through all of her different intersectionalities because that's what she is just this bundle of like obesity and identity and stuff. She came in and just dressed down that feminist, like not understanding like the harm that cis women perpetuate on trans women and stuff like that. And you look, I was reading that and it was just like so fascinating. I'm like, what is going on here? Like it's feminine. I see feminism eating itself now. And it's just because Julie Russo just really wanted power. She really wanted to be the person who was right and just said, no, that's hate speech. That's not hate speech. You're wrong. You're not wrong. You know, we all know that white men are wrong. We know that at least. We all agree on that. But there's a lot of things you don't really understand. And I get to dispensate power,
It seems like
authority.
there's this may be thought long before, but like this decoupling of power and responsibility. Like there's this whole pass the buck kind of thing, right? Like all blame is externalized, but all power comes to me kind of thing. Like I don't know,
Oh, yeah. 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 Yeah.
so there's not the commensurate, like if I have some power, I actually have accountability for it.
Yeah.
And so people are running
No.
around trying to amass all this power and socialize all the bad stuff that they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And without a reality check, there's no reason for it to stop. It just ramps up and ramps up and ramps up. So eventually, Columbia will have they'll exhaust the students will exhaust their energy. It is spring, right? It is spring. Like this is another just a primal aspect of why Evergreen State College happened the way it did. Is that all these kids were cooped up all winter long, and now it's spring, and their hormones go boing, and the shirts of the girls go wink, and then the boys go rah, you know, and like everybody's like, what do we do with all this energy? And like revolution, you know, in the streets and the sheets, you know. So I think that that's a facilitating power,
I'm
and
not
it can't
following
last long.
that so much. Why does that necessarily follow?
I think that there's just a lot of
Spring
cooped up
fever.
energy. It's
Mm.
just fever. It's just like cabin fever and spring fever. It's just like that. That's part of. I'm thinking about the hydraulics of how long these kids can
Sap is
go.
rising.
The what is
The
tapas?
sap is rising,
The
like in
sap
Sap.
is
trees, right? It's just like
wow. The sap is rising. Can we get that on a t-shirt? That's a good one. I like that. No, I just think that it's just natural, horny, erotic, libidinous energy that's fueling the students acting out in this way.
Hmm. That's an interesting one. I do agree completely with what you were saying about detriangulating the government from the funding process, that there's something really wrong with the accountability there. If the customer is always right, in a sense, it's really the loudest customer is always right in terms of the schools, because some people are very much not right, like myself, you know, and I'm, according to my school, because I don't go along with everything, I'm a white supremacist transphobe. So you don't, the customer isn't
She
always
won't
right,
even
but
let
the
me wear
loudest customer.
tights.
No, I don't so much like you in tights. I do
to go to
like
a Ren
you, but
festival.
yeah.
Let's be clear. That's why I wanted to wear tights.
Oh, okay. That's not what I heard. Anyway, no. Well, now, and actually now with the university thing, I could pull in another thing that just happened was this whole Title IX thing, right? And
Mhm.
so,
What
I mean, it's
happened? Can
even
you just give me an overview? I
the
should know,
short version was the what's the word? Instantiation. I don't know if that's the right word of gender identity, you know, in the language in terms of like thing. One could be just could one could call that they say they were being discriminated against for gender identity. And I don't know whether they took the
Mhm.
word sex out of the thing, but whatever the implications are, it does seem that one can pull gender identity in a variety of scenarios, which effectively would make the women category moot.
elective.
Yeah, yeah. And so there's that aspect. And then there was also I don't know if it went back to the exact standards, but it looks like, what was that Dear Colleague letter that during the Obama administration that made the way that they were going to proceed with cases around sexual assault or sexual harassment are reverting back to the Obama era. So it's much worse on anyone being accused of something in terms of their rights. It's certainly not the types of rights you'd have in a normal, like criminal sense.
Mm.
So this makes it, you know, a more fraught atmosphere for young men on that end, and then on the the gender stuff, identity thing, it's worse for women. So like both of these things don't make it a great atmosphere for either sex on campus. Another reason why people might go, do I want my kid going to college?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know if divestment's going to work. Because the people need prestige. Society runs on prestige, and whether we like it or not, school is the prestige mechanism. It's the certification mechanism. And I think the process of it collapsing or transferring to another alternative institution is like decades. That's decades work. So I think that, employers will not, hire, they, them pronouns, It was funny. Somebody was like complaining about the discrimination against non-binary people, because their applications get weeded out like precipitously or whatever. I'm like, well, they elected to be unemployable. Like they created a category to display how they need special treatment, like how unemployable they are. It's not discrimination. They self-identified into that category. So, they could always just like shut the fuck up and just be a man or a woman. You could do that at any time. You can put away non-binary identity. Like it's really easy. It's probably the easiest thing to shed in this world. Just not caring about it anymore. Like, and then it's gone.
Well, the hardest thing to do is to say that I was wrong. So it is there is that hurdle, but yes, I mean I agree. It's an elected category. It's not something that's inherent to the individual. So
yeah.
Yeah.
And then if you guys want it, just to fill out what we were saying about accountability, Biden or whoever Biden is, forgiving all this student loan is forgiving this complete huge grift of the colleges, and then also buying the votes of all the people that they taught to think how they want to think. So they're like, it's this huge it's like the whole, I don't know if it's a conspiracy or not. Let's bring in a bunch of immigrants who will vote for us and then outnumber all the people who, would stand against us, and then let's educate all the youth and then buy them off. It's like it's just oligarchy, and they're the ones who are like just printing the money. It's just totally corrupt. It's totally just corrupt. So
funny thing is, I mean, they're doing all of that, and yet now all these youth who are like pro Gaza or Hamas or whatever are actually upset at the Biden administration, and so they're like, well, we're not going to vote for him anyway. So like they might have bailed these people out, and then these people might go, we're not going to vote for them anyway because we don't like what's happening in Israel. I don't really know how that'll net out, but
no, you're right. I mean, it's just those coalitions are just so unstable.
Well, it is really disheartening to see how people cling to that prestige machine, like you say, Benjamin. I mean, that's something that I lost all. I felt like at some point in graduate school, this degree isn't going to be worth the paper it's printed on because I have no respect for this school. I have lost my respect for this school. I see them trying so hard to propagandize and indoctrinate us with one particular political philosophy to the point where they even declare that they're not training counselors that can work with Trump supporters, to the point where they even say that boldly, and it felt like they delegitimized themselves. They showed themselves to be completely corrupt. And yet, if I had a degree from that school right now, I would be taken so much more seriously by other people that work in the sort of area where I work. The difference between me now and me with an Antioch degree, which would have meant going to school for like another 6 months or something, or whatever it would have been, is how seriously I would be taken by my culture, by the amount of status loss that I underwent by walking away from that is not insignificant. And yet, all it would have been was a degree mill where I said, yes, sir, I agree with social justice. Yes, I agree with social justice. And I would have been betraying my conscience and going through some, this really basically form-filling education. It was an online degree at this point, which I don't know what that's worth, but it's not worth an awful lot. I could read those books on my own, and It's upsetting to see people cling to that. There are so many students who correspond with me about their college or their graduate programs, about how concerned they are about what they're seeing, and it's similar to what I have been describing. And they're not willing to walk away from it because they want the letters, they want the certificates.
Yeah.
That still means something. And I think
scheme.
that's, well, it's disheartening, really, because what we need in order for that house of cards to fall down is we need people to pull out at the bottom level. Just pull out. Stop funding them. Stop giving them your attention. Stop giving them your body and your mind.
Yeah, I wonder what's downstream of that mass divestment. Like, what's downstream of that? Like, what falls apart if everybody divests, right?
Well, people will create new things because we're always going to want to have an education system. We're always going to want to have a way to mentor each other and learn skills. So it's not that education goes away. It's that these corrupt businesses, which they are businesses, these ones need to fall down.
Yeah. I mean, I just want to say, like, even prior to all of my being aware of all of the stuff that we're critiquing, it was apparent to me that there's a lot of changes in higher education anyway. For instance, just a lot more online education. There were models of people going, maybe we won't do a 4-year on-campus experience anymore. Maybe people will go more for sort of a lifelong learning thing, and maybe they go take a course here and a course there, and they take it over time. There were companies like Google and others who were we might critique Google, but who were starting to go, well, maybe if the person just knows how to code and they actually have the skills, I'll just hire them even if they don't have the degree. So there was already, prior to all this, there's been things in motion about this, maybe the 4-year college on-campus experience getting disrupted anyway, not entirely. So those things might continue, and maybe it'll accelerate because of now we're like seeing just how corrupt these programs are and these schools are, and people don't want them. So, but there's already been things kind of happening before this that's, to me, were suggesting that that kind of, when you think back, like, I don't know, in the 50s, or someone just went to their college experience in the 4 years and all that, wasn't going to keep going the way it was anyway. So, but the prestige thing you point out, are you thinking, Benjamin, that like just somehow society will, no matter what you do, they're going to create something to be able to mark where the elite are, and like, if it's not this, it'll be something else. So we can't get rid of that. That's not going to happen.
That's why the colleges keep on expending their authority by not exercising actual authority. Mm-hmm. It's because they know there's no accountability. Like, you need these letters to be in the elite. And we've made special letters so that we can extend the elite to people who aren't really worthy of being elite, but they feel like they're in the elite and stuff. I'm sorry, but like, the Jewish mindset's not going to stop going to college. Like, culturally and probably genetically, they're engineered to believe to learn and to get signaled or stamped that they are learned. Like, that's just a part of their culture, and it's part of their genes. It's just how they are. You're not going to see them all like not go to college, right? Mm. You might see them.
Well, yeah, there's certain other demographics too that really prize education.
Yeah,
and they're not going to give that up.
Like Indian American.
They're not going to give that up.
Yeah, and Asian Americans too.
Yeah, Asians. Yeah, and then the WASPs and the weirds, Western educated, whatever, blah blah blah. RDs, weird. It's a Jonathan Haidt term. Yeah. No. So until there's so people like look at what's happening at Columbia, or look at what happened at Evergreen, and like, okay, well, this is just kind of the reality of the situation, and they'll try to figure out, okay, like, there is, so the college is set up in such a way to kind of shepherd different people to different places. So we know that this is the problem. Like, if colleges reform themselves, they would just kind of slightly start to distinguish between kind of the courses or the pathways that actually get you actual knowledge in the world, and then the humanities shit. Right. But the problem is that wokeness, so-called, spread from the humanities. We always thought like, oh, it's just going to stay in the humanities. But no, like it jumped over and it infected the whole system. So there might be a way for it to kind of do, I don't know, there's got to be some sort of oncology metaphor here to kind of like preserve, to separate, to kind of shuffle over. And then, like, okay, what kind of degree did you get? What kind of elite you are,
Hmm.
you know?
Hmm.
And then I don't know what's happening in the New York Times, but there's kind of like little hints that, maybe they don't want to be as woke as they are. But then at the same time, NPR is like, no, we're totally woke and we're going even woker, so it's like, well, does NPR, are they harmed by the loss of their audience? To what degree are they harmed by the loss of their audience?
Hmm.
Yeah,
To
I
what
don't know in
degree
terms
are
of their
lose and gain.
donation. In terms of their donors, I don't know whether, if you look at the percentage, is it all small donors on average, or is like X%
Yeah.
of their budget a few rich people that are woke? I don't know.
Hmm.
Yeah. Wikipedia.
Hmm.
Like they're asking for money, but they're totally set. Like all the money that you donate to Wikipedia goes to their like social justice campaigns, right? To get more women writing more articles that like speak in a certain narrative instead of to the truth, right?
Hmm.
So, I mean, it's just a huge Ponzi scheme.
I
No,
do
there's too many
wonder if
people.
I do wonder if this, at least the young men, so think about your Gen Z young men who kind of look at the whole college thing and go, like I just wonder if there'll be just a movement that'll become cool to not go to college. I don't know what they're all going to do exactly, but that might just, I don't know if that could break uh, that as a norm or something like that.
Hmm.
If it was like, let's not do that. I want to do something else, or I don't know if they're all going to go do startups. I don't see that happening either.
Hmm.
Peter Thiel can't fund all of them. So
Yeah.
I don't know, but I just think college in general is becoming less like viable. So I don't know. I don't know what it's so funny because I don't want to say too much, but like I work in around higher education and these types of I've been involved in creating more of the professional managerial class. And now I'm like feel guilty about it.
Well, it's interesting to think about what is it at its core? What is college? What is higher education? And it's a transmission of knowledge and skills. And
Status.
yes, but if is status okay, yeah, I guess that's a third piece. I don't know if is that a byproduct? Is that a byproduct of being able to signal that I've received this knowledge and skill set? And then that's
people are buying the status. I mean,
right. But I mean, if you kind of peel it back and go back to foundations, what's the purpose of this educational process? Why not just be, can you be an autodidact can you learn? Like a lot of what college is putting a bunch of texts in front of you and having you read them and then having you write about them so that you can engage with them and demonstrate that you learned something from them. You're demonstrating it to somebody else who then checks a box or gives them a mark that says, yes, this person has ingested and understood the information we provided. And then there's also the mentorship process, right? Which is the listening to lectures and working with faculty mentors or however you directly engage with a human being who is transmitting knowledge and skills to you. But all of these things can be achieved outside of that setting. You can find someone to work with and people to teach you individually or in smaller groups, maybe for pay, or like think about like becoming working with artists. If you want an art degree, you can read all the same texts if you wanted to. You could access all the texts that you would be learning about in school and read them on your own without doing it through school. And you can find private artists to study under and take their classes and learn skills and learn things. So the difference is what you come out of it with. That's the status marker. The status marker is shorthand for saying, I learned these things, so that it signals to other people who might meet you or see your resume, oh, this person has this certification, these letters after their name, which indicates that they did this thing. So all it is a heuristic. All it is like, it's just a signifier, the status thing, the educational thing. But we can do that sort of thing without college, but we can't get that status.
I mean, a big thing also is the network. So it's like, it's not
Yeah.
just having learned the stuff. It is, I know, because it's very tribal, like in that sense. Like people, if
Mhm.
someone's like, you're an alum of whatever, I don't know you from nothing, but I went to your school and
Mhm.
I'm going to help you get a job. I'm going to help you. So there's a huge amount of
But that
social
falls
capital.
apart at the lower levels anyway. I mean, like that seems like it's a thing for these big schools who
Yeah, the
are
elite
proud of
ones,
their
but
name.
I'm just
Yeah.
saying like that's like because a lot of people will even not even care if they learn. They actually already at a 16-year-old is already thinking, how do I get my network? Like even beyond
Yeah.
what they're going to learn, you
I think
know?
that's probably that there's probably a good point there. But like I went to school in San Antonio as a private university. Nobody up here has ever heard of that. They don't care. But it does matter that I have a degree, you know. So the network was yeah, I don't want to discount that. You're absolutely right. I think that that's
At the
absolutely
where
true.
at the like the Ivy-ish that level and what
Mhm.
people think they're trading in or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Access
Yeah, because you
gives
could
you
be like,
access
I
to
know
the elite.
so and so. I went to your school. Would you talk to me? You know, and like
Yeah,
someone's likely to say, yeah, even if you're some little, twerp.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Ginger Blaze says, no, Leslie, status has been the primary goal of higher education as an institution for quite some time now. And yeah, I agree, but I'm saying that seems like it's an inversion of what's actually valuable about the process. That's valuing the signifier, the marker, the heuristic over the content of what it signifies. Because like I said, I could have finished my school at Antioch. I was pretty close to finished with my coursework. And the difference between now and having that degree is a ton. There's a ton of difference in terms of what that means for me as a working professional. It matters tremendously in terms of how I am viewed by people who are my colleagues in this space. I am illegitimate as I don't like the words mental health. I don't work in mental health. I work more philosophically, more existentially with people. But as a helping professional, it illegitimizes my work to so many people that I don't have that degree, which would have been a matter of months. And, it's really interesting. It's like the substance of your work is not important, but the signifier is. And I don't mean to make this about me. It's just an example.
Yeah, I mean, it's not totally one way or totally the other.
Mm-hmm.
You need that signal has value,
Mm-hmm.
and it is a inflated value. It's just like a dollar. Like, but we can't just stop believing in the dollar. Like people keep on like trying to like, well, let's believe in something other than the dollar. It's really, really difficult to shift a society from one currency to another.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have Bitcoin
Yeah,
and
no.
stuff like that, and the powers that be are like, okay, well, we see belief going in this direction, so we'll figure out how to control that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So with the college degrees, it's incredibly inflated at this point, but it's still the currency of exchange for professional elites. It's
Mm-hmm.
just the currency, and that has to do with it just being reliably unreplaceable
Mm-hmm.
as a heuristic. You can say that money is a heuristic, but how far is that going to get you when you want a
I don't
cabbage,
know if
right?
that works with money. I would have to think about that some more as a
Yeah.
metaphor. But I mean, Jay Bourne in the chat, he uses the phrase fraudulent credentialism. I think that's a good phrase. Um, yeah, it's really interesting. I just losing respect for an institution and seeing it as a degree mill, but then seeing how important that degree is still to everybody around you is pretty interesting. It's like, yeah, I mean, I'm okay, but a lot
Yeah.
of people wouldn't be okay with that. Um,
Hmm.
Interesting. Well, I don't know what we covered in this conversation. We went a lot of places, but mostly about college. Any final thoughts, you guys?
I think the one thing I will say is there's this part of me that back in the days when I went to college, like it actually was like a great experience. I feel sad for how the state of affairs is now. I don't know if it will ever be corrected or something like that. And maybe like at your UATX or some other Ralston College or somewhere else where they have, because it was to have a 4 years, really getting to study all of these different things, being in an environment where people were really wanting to learn. I'd be sad if that somehow
Hmm.
just was ruined, or I don't know, like completely, or we could never recover it. And it may be that we don't, I don't know, but I found value in it back in the day.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. These systems are so huge, and we're kind of ants describing the death of a tree, that we're on. It's like, oh,
Mm.
this tree's getting soggy. Oh, look at it's poisoning some of us. And like, oh, the other guys got like mold infecting them, and they're getting more and more power. But oh, this tree's gonna fall down. This tree's gonna fall down, but we just like our perspective is so, these things are so huge. So millions and millions of people participating in these systems. We can diagnose some weirdness of it, and we can
Mhm.
like hope that wokeness is over. I'm sorry, I'm really self-conscious about that word, but like there's this debate on right-wing Twitter, like, oh, wokeness is finally slayed. It's like there's more, and there's more, and there's more, and there's more, and there's more. So it's like, what are you gonna do? Don't give up hope. Build strong relationships with real people. See beyond the credentialism, but everybody who is listening to this already knows these things. Everybody who's listening to you guys already knows the difference between a sincere person and an insincere person. And we can call out insincerity, but we have to constantly be shuffling money, shuffling resources, shuffling belief and intention and attention towards that which is good, beautiful, and true. By watching the media, by supporting different artists, by calling out and participating in truth, beauty, and goodness creating activities.
Mhm.
And then let the whole evil satanic structure lumber on and maybe correct or maybe not. But it's
Well,
fun to watch. It's fun to look at the apocalypse. It's fun
Zombies.
to
well,
sip our tea and watch Hiroshima.
I will say, Deborah, I agree. I had some really good experiences in college, but my best experiences were in community college. I really loved community college. I went to San Antonio Community College, SAC, and don't laugh, Benjamin.
Did you get a hacky there or a degree?
No, I didn't. I didn't get a degree there. I just transferred to a university. But it was really fantastic. It was just such an open and interesting place with lots of room for inquiry and disagreement and mind expansion, and it was really lovely. And I like to think that there are a lot of places out there that are still like that. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today, and I hope everybody has a lovely week, and we will see you next week. Thanks, Deborah. Thanks, Benjamin.